And we're just following this general strategy. Define the variables, figure out your key pieces of information, and then use that to figure out the equations. So in this case, we have Avery using a blend of dark chocolate and milk chocolate to make the ice cream topping at her restaurant. She wants to buy 10 kilograms more of dark chocolate than milk chocolate. And she needs 150 kilograms of chocolate in total for her next order. So D is the number of kilograms of dark chocolate, and M is the number of kilograms of milk chocolate. So let's write that down. So D is the dark chocolate, and we'll say it's in kilograms. And M is the milk chocolate. And again, this is going to be in kilograms. So we've defined our variables. Now we just need to use our key numerical information to figure out the two equations. So she wants to buy 10 kilograms more of dark chocolate than milk chocolate. So dark chocolate should be more. So basically we have, let's say, dark chocolate, and then we're going to add 10 kilograms to that to get us the milk chocolate. Or maybe it's the other way. Maybe it's the milk chocolate plus 10 gives us the dark chocolate. In fact, you can see these in the equations down below. Up here, you have D plus 10 equals M, or down here, you have M plus 10 equals D. So it's got to be one of those, but let's actually make sense of it. So she wants 10 kilograms more of the dark chocolate. So dark chocolate has to be the bigger number. So if we buy 100 kilograms of milk chocolate, then in this case, you'd add 10 to that, and dark chocolate would be worth 110. But in this case, it's the opposite. If you buy 100 kilograms of dark chocolate, then add 10 to it, then the milk chocolate would be 10 kilograms more. So it's not going to be this top one. So it's going to be this equation here, since it makes sense with our intuition. If we bought 100 kilograms of milk chocolate, we'd add 10 to that, and so dark chocolate would be 10 more than the milk chocolate, depending on whatever amount of milk chocolate you want to buy, or she wants to buy. So we figured out one of the equations, but let's go to this next piece of information here. She needs 150 kilograms of chocolate in total for her next order. Let me just write that down. So our total is 150 kilograms. And we get the total by just adding the amount of dark chocolate we have plus the amount of milk chocolate she has. So in both cases, it's kilograms plus kilograms, so you're going to get a total in kilograms. So we can say the milk chocolate plus the dark chocolate has to equal 150 kilograms. And that will be our second equation. In fact, that's probably the easier of the two. It's pretty straightforward. You didn't really need to think it through. So we know M and D have to add together to give us 150. So you can see that here, 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 and here. It looks like it's in all three cases. So that won't help us eliminate anything. But now we're just looking for this M plus 10 equals D. And that one can only be found here. So choice letter C would be the correct answer. And notice choices B and D had these two options for equations that we didn't really even consider, but these won't be correct because this is saying that the dark chocolate is 10 times the amount of milk chocolate. But we just want to add 10 kilograms. We don't want to multiply it by 10. Likewise, this one is saying that the milk chocolate is 10 times the amount of dark chocolate. So if there were 10 kilograms of dark chocolate here, the milk chocolate would be worth 100 kilograms. And that is not the scenario that we have. So both of those equations wouldn't be right, which is why we only really looked at these two. And then this was the correct one here. So let's do one final problem. And in this case, we have Elliot buying some yarn. So Elliot has some yarn that she wants to use to make hats and scarves. So very similar to the first one, just different numbers. Each hat uses 0.2 kilograms of yarn, and each scarf uses 0.1 kilograms of yarn. Elliot wants to use twice as much yarn for scarves as for hats, and she wants to make a total of 20 items. So let's say H is the number of hats. We're given that right here. And S is the number of scarves. So S is the number of scarves, and from here we just need to figure out the equations, but let's look at the information we were given. So for a hat, it's 0.2 kilograms of yarn. So 0.2 kilograms per hat. And for scarves, it's 0.1 kilograms per scarf. So 0.1 kilograms for every scarf that's made. And then Elliot wants to use twice as much yarn for scarves as hats. So since she wants to use twice as much yarn for scarves as for hats, we have to be careful with that piece of information since we're dealing with the amount of yarn. And so we're going to come back to that. Let's find the easier equation first, which is this one. She wants to make a total of 20 items. And so H is the number of hats, S is the number of scarves. So if her total would be 20 items, and we don't know how much we're making of each, we can just say that the number of hats plus the number of scarves would have to be 20. So that's one of our equations. And usually it's a good idea to find one equation so then you can at least eliminate, though sometimes you can't eliminate. So if you can find the easy equation first, that would be my suggestion. And notice this one does not have that equation. Both of these do have it. And this bottom one here also does not have it. So we've eliminated now down to choices B and C. So it's going to look something like this. And we need to be careful. This one's a little bit challenging since we're dealing with the amount of yarn for scarves and hats. So we can say that there's twice as much yarn for scarves as for hats. So the yarn for scarves, so let me write it like this. Yarn for S is equal to twice, I'll make some room here, the yarn for hats. And so how do we figure out the amount of yarn you would use for a scarf? Well, it's 0.1 kilograms per scarf. And if we multiply it by the number of scarves, which is just S, then that would give us the amount of yarn we need for scarves. So it'd be 0.1 times by S, and that would give us the number of yarns for scarves. And then we'll multiply this by 2 times the number or the amount of yarns for hats. And each hat is 0.2 kilograms. If we multiplied that by H, the number of hats, that would tell us the weight in yarn that we need to use. So this would be 0.2 times H. So these terms in parentheses, these expressions here, this is just giving us the total amount of yarn in kilograms, which is what they're asking for, since they're telling us we use twice as much yarn for scarves as for hats. Now, if they said twice as many scarves as hats, then we don't need to even consider this. We can just say that S equals 2H. This would give us that there are twice as many scarves as hats, since if you made 10 hats, you'd have 20 scarves. But in this case, we're talking about the amount of yarn. So you have to be really careful with your units here. So in this case, we had 0.1S is twice 0.2H. So for this last problem, choice letter C is the correct answer.